Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to lesson 1.4 in our Algebra 2A class. It's this rewriting of formulas that we talked about earlier. We're taking formulas that we know. Area of a triangle, A equals 1/2 times base times height. And what we're going to do is we're going to solve that for a specific variable. Now, why do we do that? We're going to solve this for h. What that does is it gives me a way to manipulate information when I know area and base. Because there are times, if you think back to your geometry classes, where it was find the height of a triangle. And so we're able to do that if we know area and base. So how do we solve for that? Well, what we said, guys, is we're going to look at the operations on H. And then what we're going to do is undo them. So when we look at what we're doing to H, it's pretty simple. There is only one operation there. We are multiplying. And how do we undo multiplication? Well, we are going to divide. So what is that going to look like? Well, I'm going to divide by what I'm multiplying by. I'm multiplying by 1/2 b. So I'm going to go over here and divide by 1/2 b. So the area divided by 1/2 b is equal to h. Now, I don't like having this 1/2 in my denominator, so what do we do with that? Remember that this is the number 1. And so when you have something like this that is just a single fraction, there's no addition, there's no subtraction. So, if there's no addition, if there's no addition or subtraction, what you're going to do is to divide the coefficients. And so what that means is I'm going to go to my calculator and I'm going to do 1 divided by 1/2. Remember to use your parentheses. And we do, that equals 2. So I'm going to have 2a divided by b equals h. Now, I'm sure I've got a few of you at home that you're like, all right, Mrs. Woodard, you completely lost me here at this red step. That's fine. We will have time tomorrow to work on clarifying those questions. But if we can see that there's only multiplication, so I'm only going to divide, we've got 90% of the battle solved on that one. All right, let's take a look at our next one. I need to solve for w. So here's w. I need to look at what my operation is, or operations are, and how I'm going to undo that. Well, once again, I think I made too big of a chart because the only operation I see there is multiplication. Now, I'm multiplying by L and H, but it's just multiplication, so I'm going to undo that with division. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to divide. I'm going to divide by L and H. I'm going to divide by LH. You can put the multiplication sign in there. You can just leave them next to each other because that's how we show multiplication. And so we have just W now on this side. On our left-hand side, we have volume divided by length times height. But once again, the only operation is multiplication. So the only thing we undo is division. One last one of our formulas, and then we're going to get into the solving for y. It's the perimeter of a rectangle that we're going to solve for w. So our perimeter is 2L plus 2W, and we're solving for w. So I need to look at what my operations are. And how do I undo those? So if we look at what w is, in terms of order of operations, we would multiply it by 2, so multiply would be the first operation that we would evaluate. Then I would add the 2L. So how do I undo that? I'm going to undo addition with subtraction. So I'm going to subtract 2L from each side. I'll make it first at 1. That leaves me with 2W. And that equals, now we've got two different variables here, P and L, which means I can't combine those together. So we're going to have P minus 2L. We write it in that order. P first, then I subtract the 2L. Now I look back at what we have here. I have multiplication that we have to undo. We undo that with division. And so I'm going to divide by 2. This entire thing needs to be divided by 2. So my formula for W is W equals P minus 2L divided by 2. Now there is some simplifying that we can do because that is a fraction in sorts, but this is what I want to see. If you take P minus 2L and then divide that by 2, that will give you your W. All right? So that's how we rewrite our formulas. What we really want to be able to do, though, is solve for y. We're getting ready to get into the stuff we're going to be graphing. And in order to do that, we have to be able to solve for y and use our calculator. So when I look at y, I am, the operation is multiplying by a -1. And so I'm going to undo that with division. And then I am adding 3x. So I'm going to undo that with subtraction. Now we could be a little bit more specific here because it's not quite those formulas that we were seeing before. So I'm going to subtract 3x from each side. I have this -1y is equal to 9 minus 3x. We're going to divide by -1. And if you remember here, guys, we're going to divide every term by that -1. So we're going to have y is equal to -9 plus 3x. So here is what our solving for y looks like. And so for number 5, example 5, I'm going to turn this into a on your own. So you're going to do this and do this now. And then we will check in class. Do not skip it. Do not forget. Stop and do it right now. But what you're going to do, ladies and gentlemen, is you are going to solve for y. So write down your chart of operations, write down your chart of undo, and then go through and solve. Have a good evening.